afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this installment of Asian Business. We're going to start today with a guest speaker, our final guest speaker for this semester. I have the pleasure to announce to you our guest speaker today is Dr. Greg Story, who's the head of Dale Carnegie training here in Japan. So let's give Greg a warm welcome to our classroom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and welcome to this talk about careers, talk about business in Japan, and some time at the end for questions. So please, if you've got some questions, think about those. I'll cover those then. There's plenty of time for that. Basically, Florian is going to help me today to forward the slides. So I thought Florian's advice to me was talk a little bit about your own career and how you got to where you are today. Now, my example is a great example of career planning. Perfectly sequenced. Absolutely strategically planned from day one and moved all the way through very, very effectively. So you'll see this as a model for your own careers as you're developing your careers further. So let's go to the first one here. And this is an actor called Osei Koichi, and has played the part of Shintaro, who was the samurai. His ninja friend there is called Tombe the Mist. And about 1962-3 in Australia, first time we had Japanese TV programming. And I was a young boy, 10, 11 at that time, and this came on. It was unbelievably impactful for me. And that's one of the reasons I'm here today. Because my interest in Japan began with this, what we call a chanbara, typical chanbara, a sword drama in Japanese TV you see today, aimed at young kids. It was dubbed into English, and it was the most spectacular thing. It had a guide of westerns, Cisco Kid, Rifleman, all the classic American western dramas for children, and then the Vikings and William Tell, and then suddenly Shintaro and Tombe the Mist turn up. So younger people today have anime as a stimulation for interest in Japan. This is where I started. And that led to me getting into the martial arts and still training 46 years later. So that again was from that initial interest in Japan and coming through the ranks. I was competitive for many years, being a referee and official in many aspects. And happy to see my son on the left-hand side there, got his black belt last year, so nice to see that. And from that interest, I started training, but at the same time I started working. And my first career role was in sales, and I was a door-to-door encyclopedia salesperson. And what that meant was at about 6 o'clock, you were dropped off in an industrial suburb somewhere, generally low-income suburb somewhere, and you have to go and knock on each door. And you try to convince people who've got no money that they should buy this very expensive set of Encyclopedia Britannica for the kids' education. And I did that, and I was a total failure. As 16 years of age, I'd just finished high school, I'd soon to turn 17, but as a 16-year-old door-to-door salesman of Britannica, it wasn't a great success. So I decided to step my career up a bit, and I went to the next one, which was pumping gas in a gas stand. And I did that for a little while, and the excitement got a bit too much for me working there. So I joined an insurance company. And it looked just like that, actually. The desks were laid out like that. There was a huge big room. I did that for a couple of years. And I was training karate at the same time, so it worked in nicely for my interest. Found that again, pretty exciting stuff, insurance. I don't know if you've ever worked in the insurance business, but very exciting stuff. So I decided, well, I just can't stand all this excitement. I better get something else happening here. So I became a builder's labourer, and I started working construction, building large buildings, building houses at one stage there too. Did that for a little while. And then I decided to work in a factory. I worked in a factory. If anyone's read Chekhov, he had a book called My Universities. And it was actually not about university per se, it was about all the factories he worked in and the different jobs he had and how that educated him about life. This is a bit like that for me. This is my university, working in construction, working in factories, actually launching ships. I worked as what we call a painter and a docker in Australia. That means when ships come to port, people have to get the ship onto the harbour side and have to be painted. I was doing that. And this ship is actually being launched on rails, wooden rails coated in grease, coated in fat. And that's exactly what we did. We launched a ship just like that on these rails successfully. Didn't go plunk and fall over like sometimes they do. So did that for a while. And then worked in an abattoir as a day labourer. So you turn up in the morning, they have a look around, they say, okay, you, come on, everyone else go home. So did that for a while. Now this guy with the carcass here, he's actually an expert because he's cutting it up. I wasn't an expert. So my job was like this other guy here, picking it up and carrying it around as a labourer. So I did that for a while. And then I worked on railways. I worked as what we call a fettler. A fettler is what this guy's doing on the rails. So I did that for a little while as well. Again, everything you can see perfectly planned for my career. This is how you step forward. All strategized from the age of 16. This is what I'm going to do. You know. And then last job was working for the Ford assembly line in Brisbane on the line on what they call the wet deck, which is where you're actually buffering the cars. They've been painted, but they're getting a buffer before they get a final paint. Did that for a while. And then at the age of 21, university. So I'd worked for 4 years, putting my money together, going through Chekhov's universities in factories, and the 3K in Japan, the Kikken, Kitane, Kitsui, the difficult, dirty and dangerous jobs, and then finally university, where I spent 14 years at university, continuously. Started in undergraduate, did an honours degree. We have a 3-year system in Australia, plus honours year, 1 year. Came here as a Mombusho scholar, and that was another 2 years of Japanese language study, and then did a master's degree at Jochi, and then went home, started my PhD, and then spent about a year and a half preparing that. Came back here as a Japan Foundation Fellow to do my field work, and then went back to Australia and spent 5 years writing up my thesis. Now that was an interesting experience, and killed me, absolutely killed me. For the last 2 years, you're basically reading your own prose, and the most tortured gobbledygook sounds perfect to you, but anyone else reading cannot understand what the hell you're talking about. And I was doing Sino-Japanese relations, so I was looking at decision making on the Japanese side about economic assistance into China. And when I tell people that, and I say I was doing Japanese decision making, they burst into laughter usually, because if you've been involved with Japan for a while, you know that decision making is very opaque here. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So I did the PhD, thought I'd start teaching, and I'd teach Japanese politics and international relations, that type of thing. I remember that time we had the bubble going on in Japan, my phone was ringing off the hook, and I had a lot of people ring me up say, you know, Greg, we want to buy this from Japan, or we want to sell this to Japan. So I thought, well, you know, I'll set up my own little consulting company here, and I'll go back and teach at university later. Never made it back. I'm still waiting to go back and teach. So I came out of university life, went into business as a consultant, did that for a while, and then I got into a company which is now called Jones Lang LaSalle. It was called Jones Lang Wooten in those days, a very big national real estate company, and I was on the Japan desk in that company, and the idea was to sell commercial products like buildings, golf courses, five-star hotels, shopping malls, big stuff to Japanese buyers. Now, that would have to be the worst company name you could possibly come up with to be selling to Japanese. So imagine this scenario. I want to come to Japan, meet companies. I don't know anybody, so I'm cold calling Japan. And I ring up and I say, こちらは Jones Lang Wooten no Greg Story でございます. Hello, this is Greg Story from Jones Lang Wooten. Now you're picking up the phone, and suddenly you've got a foreigner speaking Japanese, and it's all katakana. You know, Jones Lang Wooten no Greg Story でございます, all katakana. And so the first reaction you would get would be, eh? In typically Japanese polite form. And then you'd have to explain to someone who you were. And normally you've got, in those days anyway, the OL, the office lady, would pick up the phone, and she would say, 1 moment please. And then you'd get the, most dweeby, pimply, youngest guy in the section, because they had to go to the next lowest level male. And he'd get the phone, and I'd go through the whole thing again, explaining what I want. He'd say, wait a moment. And finally, you might get to someone like the Kacho or someone a bit higher. And out of pure sympathy, they would agree to see me on my trip to Japan. I'd come and I'd try and explain what we had in terms of products. And this is sort of at the end of the bubble, actually. The bubble had actually peaked, and we were in the sort of downturn. But no one knew it at that time. Did manage to sell some properties, but it was hard going, very hard going. And my Japanese wasn't anywhere near as good as it is today in those days. And so I did that for about 4 years. And then I got into international trade. I applied for a job to set up a brand new operation in Japan. Now, this is back in the early 90s. The number of Australians who would have had that experience to start something from nothing, set it up from nothing in Japan, you could probably count them on one hand in those days. Even now, it wouldn't be many. So I thought, well, this is a good opportunity. I'll come back to Japan. I'll learn a lot of things. So I managed to get that job, and I opened an office in Nagoya. Now, I lived in Tokyo previously as a student, so I understood Tokyo. I didn't know the rest of Japan. And when I was living in Tokyo, I thought that Tokyo equaled Japan. When I lived in Nagoya, I realized Tokyo is Tokyo, and Japan is Japan, and they're not the same thing. And Nagoya was tough. Anyone here from Nagoya? Anyone here from that Chiba region? No? Anyone doing business with Nagoya? Okay, very tough. Do you know the word sakoku jidai, the closed country mentality of Japan during the Bakufu era prior to Meiji? That's Nagoya still. Very, very conservative, very parochial, very regional. Even for Japanese who come from outside of outside of Nagoya to work there, they're not accepted. Just not accepted because you're not from that region. The people who work in those companies graduated from universities there. It's a very closed world. So as me, as a foreigner, trying to introduce Australian products and services into that market was tough. Had some success, it was hard. And then I ran our operation in Osaka, which is much easier. Anyone here from Kansai? Any Kansai-jin here? No? The beauty about Osaka is yes, no, very clearly, very quickly. In Nagoya, it's very simple. The answer is always no. But at least in Osaka, it's a yes or a no, and they'll tell you straight away. Tokyo, it's a definite maybe. Most of the time. You're never quite sure if it's a yes or a no. But Osaka, yes, no. They're very businesslike. And that was refreshing from having worked in Nagoya. It was like that. And then I came back to Tokyo and I ran the operation in Tokyo, became a country head for Japan. And then I had a career change to retail banking. And I joined the Shinsei Retail Bank. This is around about 2001, which was a very exciting period of time. The long-term credit bank had gone bankrupt. They brought in foreign management to turn the bank into a different type of bank, a retail bank. Very exciting, enjoyed that. Wound up becoming the country head for the National Australia Bank, which is a big, massive organisation, 40,000 people around the world. Ran Japan operation for them for 3 years. That just about killed me because we went through Lehman shock, and that changed the whole banking world. We now had credit and risk running everything, so it was very hard to get things through the system. It was very hard to take any initiative. It was tough. The market was tough. And then, as a natural, logical consequence of all of those things, I came to Dale Carnegie, which is a corporate training company. It's a 105-year-old company, founded by Dale Carnegie. His daughters own the company today. And this is all around a number of things: leadership, communication skills, presentation training, sales. These are some core areas we do. And it's been very successful. It's training 90% of the Fortune 500 companies. Now, if you think about it, Fortune 500 companies are the richest, most powerful companies in the world. They can afford anybody. They only want the best. And we train 90% of those guys. So that says something about the quality. In Japan, we've been here for 54 years. And that's very important because often with Japanese buyers, they think, oh, this is American, it won't work in Japan. You say, well, that may be the case in some products or services, but we've been here 54 years, totally localized now, so that's not an issue for us. Okay, so that's very important. So credibility. Warren Buffett. Anyone heard of Warren Buffett? Yeah. Most successful business person probably ever. Probably one of the most successful business people ever. And certainly the most successful investor ever. He is a massive fan of Dale Carnegie. And this was a takeout from CBS News. Doesn't matter which documentary you pick. In fact, there's a new one on Warren Buffett's just come out. Every time he says, on my wall in my office in Omaha, I don't have my university or master's graduation certificates, I have my Dale Carnegie certificate, because this changed my life. Now, if you're in business and you want a credibility statement, and you want a testimonial, how would you like to have Warren Buffett, the most famous, most successful investor on the planet, say your product or service changed his life? That's pretty good, isn't it? And that's what he says. We don't pay Warren Buffett anything because, well, we can't afford Warren Buffett. Imagine what he's worth. And he only ever gives testimonials for his own companies that he owns, except for Dale Carnegie. He says that every time. So very popular there. And in Japan, Murakami-san Norio, he's very well known amongst the Japanese business community. He was the chairman of Google at one stage, many things. Very big fan of Dale Carnegie. Did Dale Carnegie training in his 30s. And then that again changed his life and changed his career path. And again, a very, very big fan. So again, looking for credibility on the Japanese side. Just hit one more there for me, please. Yeah, thank you. So we're in 100 countries around the world, teaching 30 languages. Now, this is about Asian business, so we are right through Asia. The only country we're not in is North Korea. And we're unlikely to ever be in North Korea, I think, unless something dramatically different changes there. But what that means, though, is that we are testing our product across the globe. Every second of the day, somewhere, someone is teaching a Dale Carnegie course, getting feedback from the participants, getting feedback from clients about their needs. That is a tremendous asset in business, to be able to have that touch point, that antennae, global. Because when you're talking to people in Japan, you talk about trends. This is what's happening in America. This is what's happening in Europe. This is what's happening in the rest of Asia. This is where you fit into the world. This is what we've seen work somewhere else. This is what's been fantastically successful for these particular industries that you're in other countries. Very good for referencing what's going on there. And this is one of Dale Carnegie's principles. There's 30 principles of human relations. This is number one. It's the only negative one. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. When you read his principles, they're very, very simple. They're very, very simple, but not easy to do. Okay. So, this is from our YouTube channel. We were just chatting earlier before. We've got nearly 500 videos on YouTube. They're all free. We're trying to promote Dale Carnegie. So I use YouTube a lot, putting up how-to videos, how to do this, how to do that. It's free. It's on our website. Please access that. And it's all there for you. We use podcasts. I do 3 podcasts every week, which I can tell you is a lot. It's very demanding. But again, we're doing content marketing, so we're trying to get the message out. We do a lot on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And go to the next one. You see here, there's, 7,300 followers on LinkedIn. I post on LinkedIn every day. I post in Japanese and I post in English every single day. And so now, what do we got here? 460 articles on LinkedIn. So if you go to my LinkedIn page, and you should do that, there's 460. There's an archive of 460 articles that are about 600, 700, 800 words long. It's all straight business. It's all on different topics. And you'll see that there. So that might be advantageous for you to see what's current in business, what are the issues facing business people. I try to address those in those particular articles that I'm writing. Okay. So, some of the factors we're going to have to think about in business going forward. I'll start with some macro factors. And we hear a lot about the demographics, but what does that mean? I'm talking about a demographic diet here. This is what I mean. This is where we are now. We're looking a bit chubby around the middle. Okay, we should go on a bit of a diet, right? A bit chubby around the middle. This is 2015, and this is, you can see the ages, 0 to 100, and then male, female, but you can see it's quite bulky around the middle part there. This is what it's going to look like in 2030. You can see it's slimming down quite a bit. And then if we compare 2015 to 2030, you can see the difference of how it's slimming down. Go to the next one. This is what's happening. The numbers of young people between the ages of 18 and 34 is basically, in that period of time, between 2010 2060 I should say, is going to halve. Going to halve. And the next one, the next generation behind them, same thing. It's going to halve. Now, what does that mean? It means your consumer base is diminishing rapidly. It means your ability to hire young people diminishing rapidly. And everybody I speak to in business today, right now, says we can't get enough staff. We can't hire enough people. If you're an English-speaking Japanese person, future is going to be glorious for you. Going to be glorious because there's very few of you. And by the way, most of them are not going overseas to study like they used to. So once you can speak English now, there's not a big supply of people like you coming through the line. You're going to be very valuable to companies. You're going to be worth a lot of money. So the future is golden for you. It's going to be golden for the recruiting business. Because the recruiting business is going to poach, steal people from one company and put them in another company over here because they can't hire enough people. The job mobility factor is going to go up dramatically because young people are going to become like free agents in baseball. They're going to be sought after. They're going to be valuable. And they're going to become much more mobile than their parents. Much more mobile. And they're going to be harder to deal with because they're going to be very demanding. You know, I don't like this company, I'm out of here. So it means middle management has really got to step up. Now, middle management in Japan today is pretty much underdeveloped. They're not well trained, they're not well skilled, they're not good communicators, they're not good coaches, they're not good leaders. A lot of them have grown up on tough love from their seniors, and they think that's how you pass it on. Well, that's not going to work. Young people are going to say, hey, I'm out of here. Forget it, I'm done. So if you're going to be in business in Japan in the next 20, 30, 40 years, this is what you're going to be facing. Not going to be enough people, market's going to be a struggle, middle management is going to be a critical area, it's going to need development. So develop your managerial skills because middle managers who can manage are going to be in hot demand, no question, because there's so few who are actually capable. And security, this is around the global environment. Japan's ability to have a positive relationship with its neighbours is going to be a very critical factor around security. The sad part is, Japan is a major power, third largest economy in the world, with probably some of the weakest soft diplomacy. Probably got the most difficult political system to actually have influence outside of Japan, just the way things work in Japan and the political system. Abe is a bit of a rare commodity. Koizumi was a rare commodity. Normally leaders are chosen for their weakness, not for their strength in Japan. So projecting power, projecting strength is not a function of the political system here. The foreign ministry, it's a small player in the Japanese government. Finance ministry, big player. Goemesho, small player. So it's hard for them to have power. So Japan's representation is going to be a struggle with China, with North Korea, particularly even with South Korea, going forward. So this is going to have some elements to it which we don't know where this is going. Will Japan have to rearm? Will the populace accept that? What's going to happen with North Korea that's fully tooled up, fully capable of attacking Japan? What will that mean for us in terms of a location to live in and work? Security terms. Currency too, we're seeing the yen weakening now, getting to a stronger dollar. This is going to have an impact on trade. It's going to have an impact on importing. What does Japan import? A lot of raw materials, particularly energy, so it makes those things more expensive, makes the input costs higher. Okay, it means that you're hopefully getting an advantage the other when you sell, because against the dollar it'll become cheaper. The balance will be interesting to see how that works out. It's going to make it interesting to see how they get around the inflation. But whatever business you're in, you can guarantee your knowledge of currency trends is going to become important because it's going to impact somewhere in your business. In my business, we report in yen, but at the end of the year, we're ranked in dollars. We finished in the top 10 of 200 franchises last year. the yen has substantially weakened since that point in time. So this year we're going to have a harder job just to get where we were last year, because the dollar is so much stronger and the yen so much weaker. Will have an impact on things for you. We talk about trade barriers. There's going to be a pressure on Japan. The trade barriers for Japan are really much reduced on where they used to be. It's mainly agricultural products are left off. Now, you see a lot in the media now about automobiles and American cars. I don't know, has anyone noticed that there's a lot of Mercedes-Benzes, BMWs, Audis, Fiats, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, a lot of European cars here in Japan. Is that a trade barrier? A friend of mine, Pontus Hagstrom, was the head of Fiat here. He told me last year was their best year ever. Sold the most cars ever. And yet now we're seeing friction with America on cars. You know, Trump saying Japan won't buy foreign cars. Well, they do buy foreign cars. They just don't have to buy American foreign cars. So there are some pockets where we're going to have trade barriers there perhaps to be resolved. In the pharmaceutical area, one credit we have to give to the Abe cabinet is they have substantially reduced the approval times for drugs from like years and years down to months. And that speeds up a lot of processes in Japan. And so Australia is a big agricultural exporter, and there still are distinct barriers here. But compared to in the past, it's a much more open economy now. However, as we go into bilateral trade relationships instead of multilateral like we have in the past, and if America becomes a trade barrier heavy country of having lots of tariffs on imports, and everyone starts to reciprocate and do the same thing, what is that going to mean for global trade? Are we going to go back to where we were in the 50s and 60s? You know, that will have a serious impact on the economy everywhere. So we don't know where we're going with that, but that's something that you're going to be facing. We have to think about that going forward. Now, let's get into some micro elements. You want to sell something in Japan, you want to be a service or a product, this is what you're facing. And often it's, I don't know your company. I don't know your company's reputation. I don't know anybody who buys from your company. I don't know anything about you. I don't know how long you're going to be around. I don't know how much I can trust you. And by the way, what was it you wanted to sell me again? This is the reaction, right? Skepticism. As we know, Japan is a mistake-free zone, an error-free zone. You're not allowed to make a mistake, no errors. Well, the best way to make no errors is do nothing. Make no decisions, take no responsibility, have no accountability, do nothing about doing something new, stick with this tried and true. The angel we know in Japan is far superior to the devil we don't know. And that's always the problem with your company like us. You're trying to get new clients, you're trying to get new buyers, you have to continually face this. This is one of the issues that you're going to be facing. And I talked before about when I say I did a PhD in Japanese decision making, people laugh because often it's very hard to get a decision. And it's often very opaque who's making the decision. Who's the final decision maker? Often it's not clear because this group idea, don't want to have individual accountability, don't want to take responsibility, so therefore let's spread it around. So if it goes wrong, none of us are responsible. It's a bit like trying to find someone who's responsible for the problems with moving Skiji, right, to the new site. Very hard to find any one particular person who can actually say, well, you made the decision, that's a problem. They haven't located that person yet, have they? Not likely to either. So decision making is very hard. Who do you try and influence? And even within companies, I find it very interesting that we can talk to the president, but the HR department may have a different view from the president on what's going to happen. We had a case recently that the president did our program, loved it, said this is great, I want my company to have this. We go and talk to HR, nah, we're not sure about this. Now the president's done it himself. He wants it, but HR resisting. So even things you think would be normal, straightforward, president's for it, yes, we've got the go light here, not necessarily the case. So it's interesting how in Japan, in the middle, people actually doing the execution can actually be blockers. to the final result, which you don't think would happen, but that's often the case. And often they have a lot more responsibility than we think they have. You think the hierarchy would drive the decision? Not necessarily. And urgency, sometimes we say, well, in Japan, yeah, it takes a long time to get the decision, but once they make that decision, boy, things really take off. I don't know about that. I wonder about that. Because from my view, I don't see much of a sense of urgency in Japan. What I see is this. I see this rhythm. Go to bed extremely late, watching crappy variety shows on TV, reading manga online, or surfing the net. Get up late as possible. Get onto your train, travel for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours in a sardine can, crushed by everybody in the carriage for that period of time. Get to the office, you're exhausted. Right? Before you even get to the office, you're already tired. Right? Cruise through the day, work really late, back in the train because it's crowded again because everyone's going home now. Another hour and a half, 2 hours, get home late, repeat. Tired people are rarely innovative. Tired people are rarely creative. And tired people are rarely working at a high rate. They're cruising along at a rate like that. So I'm continually pushing my team. I keep telling them, hey look, company our size in our industry, we cannot be the oil tanker. We've got to be the speedboat. So I think you'll find when you're trying to get things done in Japan, there is no great sense of urgency like you might have in the West. In Australia's case, we start very early. 7:30, 8 o'clock, come in, work like the blazers, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, go home. Go and have the hobbies, spend time with the family, spend time with friends. It's high-paced work. In the case of French work environment, because they only work in 35 hours a week, I asked French people, how on earth do you get it done in 35? They said, well, just like go for it. You come and really go for it. So the urgency is different. So you may find that you're trying to drive things like I am, but it's very hard to get other people to have that sense of urgency, to get this pace going and what you need to have. The rule of law, unlike China, anyone from China? No rule of law in China. Sorry to tell you, you know that already. No rule of law. No rule of law there. Wild West, very tricky economy to deal with. Japan, rule of law. So you think, this is good, rule of law. But a few things here which are a bit tricky as well. A lot of dirty tricks. There might be the rule of law, but it's not uncommon for your competitors, particularly if you're a foreign entity, to say, you know what, those Dow Cutting guys, I heard they got major financial problems. This is your competitor telling your buyer. I struck this when I was in trade, spreading rumours about your financial situation, trying to put doubt in the mind of the buyer to cut you out, get you out of the equation as a competitor. There's no rules. There's a rule of law, correct? But there are no rules once you get out there. The other one is corruption. Now, I don't mean the corruption of what you find in a lot of countries in Southeast Asia, which is cash, but there is that too in Japan. The television industry, a lot of corruption in the television industry. About those programs you're seeing on TV are there for a reason. Those production companies, are getting their products selected over others. It's a well-known area where there is that. But it goes beyond it. It comes down to gifts. It comes down to taking you out, entertaining you. So if you're competing with someone who's giving them gifts, who's spending the money on the entertainment, and you're not, how do you get the buyer to select you over them? It's sometimes not that easy. It looks straightforward. I've got a better product, a better pricing, but they may not choose you because their grandfather was taken to clubs, by the rival's grandfather. It's been going on like that for a long period of time, and they're very comfortable with that relationship. Again, the angel they know is better than the devil they don't, and often you're the devil they don't know. So this is something that, again, you may not be able to have an edge over your competitor. Now, when I came here in 1979 for the first time, everyone was talking about internationalization, right? Coxacre. Now what are we talking about today? Globalization. Globulka. I got no idea what the difference is between internationalization and globalization, but they're still talking about it. And how many years ago was that, right? 79, that's a long time ago. So here we are, way into the future, we're still dealing with these issues. As Japan dries up as a source of buying power, Japanese companies must go outside, and they're doing that. And they need globalized people. Where are they? Where are they? Young Japanese are not going offshore to study anymore as like they used to. Where are they going to come from? Are we going to have immigration? I'm not so sure we're going to have that anytime soon. There will be some, but it'll be very contained. So how is Japan and how is your business going to deal with this? Because that's where we're going. It's one of those big unanswered questions, but it is a real issue. Okay? Now, this is a very useful matrix. Business is more about personalities than it is about nationalities. Germans are like this. Australians are like that. Chinese are like this. French are like this. Japanese are like this. Yes, there are cultural aspects, but what's more important is the individual person. So it's very hard to make a decision and put people into boxes when you first meet them. But you've got to do that in business. You've got to make a first impression yourself, and you've got to read the first impression of that person so you know how to connect with that person. I'm going to teach you 2 decisions that will help you with that. Would you like to know the 2 decisions you've got to make? Like to know that? Yeah, here we go. First decision, when you meet someone, are they low in assertion terms or high? How do you tell that? If they're low in assertion terms, they don't state their opinion very much. They probably don't speak in a very big voice. Probably rather quiet, rather considered. A bit observing rather than contributing. Assertion, high assertion the other way. Let me tell you what I think. This is what we should do. This is what my experience was. Okay, we're going to lunch. We're going to go to McDonald's. That's high assertion, right? So there is the person low or high in assertion terms. Decision 1. Decision 2. Is this person outcome oriented, task oriented? Get the numbers, get the result. Are they driven that way, or are they more interested in how the people are? How will everyone feel? Is everyone going to be able to get behind this? Can we get the team power together and really advance the business? You'll hear from how they talk. When you know that, then you can start deciding where people are. If they're low in assertion terms, and in fact, sorry, the screen's dropped off here, this is the way this is dropped. It's got task on the bottom there, sorry, it says task. If they're low in assertion and rather high task, they're often what we call analyticals. Okay. If they're accountants, 3 decimal places, always appreciated when you're dealing with accountants. So they're very detail-oriented, scientists, lawyers, accountants, technicians, engineers, very detail-oriented people. So when you're dealing with those people, you better become more detail-oriented yourself, and much more detail-oriented than you normally would be. The polar opposite of that is they're high people, also assertive, expressives, trainers, salespeople, actors, like that. They're not afraid of people, they're not afraid to state their opinion. Expressive, big picture people. The one thing salespeople hate, paperwork, filling in the CRM, doing the paperwork, don't like that. I want to be with the people. They love people. They want to get out there and sell, but they hate that micro. So when you're dealing with big picture people, don't kill them with detail. Let's talk about the future and how great it's going to be and when we can have a big party to celebrate the success. This is the type of thing we're looking for. So, down in the bottom right-hand corner here, they're task-oriented and they're highly assertive, driver type. The one-man shacho, okay, the bossy boss, the CEO. Right? Time is money. Come on, let's go. Don't waste my time. When you get into their office, don't want to hear a big story. They want to hear what's going to happen. I got an idea, boss. Here's 3 reasons why I should work. Let's do it. They're happy with that. So with those sort of people, short, sharp, to the point. very much appreciated because they're busy. The opposite, the amiable type. Let's get to know each other. Let's have a cup of tea. Let's spend a bit of time together. And I'll drop your voice. Drop your voice right now. Go drop the body language too. We talk about people more. So it's not that you're schizophrenic with 4 different personality styles. You are all of those, as I am too. And we move into different areas as we need to. When I'm dealing with the finances of my company, I move into this field. When I'm in sales or training mode, I move out of, I'm a driver by the way, I move up into expressive. I very rarely, maybe never go there, actually. I go here, or I go up there from there. Most people are the same. You have a preference. When you're dealing with other people, if you can find their preference, and if you can match and mirror that, they're going to think, I like Florian. He's just like I am. We're on the same wavelength. We're simpatico. Okay, I'm with you. That's very important, particularly when you're creating first impressions. So look for these things when you meet people and try it. Mirror yourself, but it takes practice. It takes practice. It's not so easy. Let's try next one. So in Japan, dry versus wet, a lot of Japanese would come into that amiable group, I would think, actually, proportionally. They like to have that human interaction. They think that often Western people are the dry, cut to the point, the driver type. Let's talk money, let's get it happening, what's the key point? Let's get to know each other a bit. So you'll find a lot of Japanese prefer that wet stickiness than that very sharp business-like approach. So be prepared for that. We know about tatema and hone, right? The superficial and the real. And sometimes it looks like people aren't telling the truth, but it's cultural awareness, it's harmony, it's all those sorts of things to make things flow here. So we've got to be aware, is this tatema or is this hone? What am I hearing here? What can I trust? Okay? And the handshake versus being lawyered up. Okay? We've got one budding lawyer, at least in the audience tonight. In Japan, I rarely do contracts. It's a handshake. We're going to deliver the training. If I'm dealing with American companies, contracts are like this. I had one recently, it was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Signed it anyway, because you want to do the business. But Japan, in some ways, from a business point of view, at a certain scale anyway, is a very easy place to do business because the trust is there. Japanese view, if the trust is not there, the contract's meaningless. And actually, that makes a lot of sense. It's going back to probably where we used to be, many, many, many decades ago in the West too. Your handshake was everything. Trust was there. We've changed a bit in the West, but Japan, they still got it, which I like. And emotional versus unemotional. When I came to Japan, I thought Japanese people were unemotional, you know, very serious people. They're the most emotional people I think you can ever find. And business is done on emotion, actually. They know somebody they trust, they'll choose that company. They like you, they'll choose you. This is not rational, this is emotional. So don't miss people skills, emotional contact with people. And innovation versus fitting in, I said before, tired people are not innovative, and also standing out is difficult in Japan. No one wants to stand out because the middle of the pack is the safest place. I want to be in the middle of the pack, not on the extremes. So that's a bit of a disincentive for innovation. People would rather fit in. So it makes it hard in business to get innovation. And I'm going to stop it there and call for questions you might have. Who has the first question?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Greg. Well, we have time for questions, so anything you would like to ask, we would like to know either about Greg's career, about the company, or about what business we're talking about.
When you were talking about, you were cold calling a lot of these companies when you're trying to get into deal with one of your former jobs. Like, how'd you get them to trust you eventually? What did you go through to gain the trust?
Calling from Brisbane, Australia to Japan to make an appointment was mind-numbingly difficult. Took about 25 minutes. And at the end, for whatever reason, I would stand up and I'd be bowing while I'm talking on the phone as we're wrapping the conversation up to get the appointment. Go and meet them face to face. That was the secret. Because then you could have the small talk, you could have the meeting, and in those days, people had expense accounts. I was a bit naive. What I didn't realise was I was the secret to unlocking the corporate expense account. So let's have lunch. Let's go out tonight. Let's go to dinner. Let's go to the club. I spent a lot of time in clubs, paid for by these people, but I thought it was so popular. Actually, it wasn't that at all. But it was a way to connect. It was a way to get to know people. And I think this is like anywhere. As you get to know people better, then the trust comes. So I think it's very hard to do business remotely with Japan because it's still very much a face-to-face culture, business culture. And I personally, for example, if I'm sending a proposal to someone I've met, or even if they ring me up, they say, send me a proposal, I want to go and deliver it. I want to be in the room watching them, watching their body language, watching their reaction, deal with any questions because it may not be clear what's in the proposal for them. I still think it's very, very important for face-to-face in Japan, and that's where you build the trust. And it's not just one meeting, it's a number of meetings. You come back, you come back, you come back. Yeah. Where's the next question? Yeah, please.
Earlier on, you said you train employees for the Fortune 500 companies. So your company do that. So my question is, can you elaborate more on that? What actually do you do how do you train these employees before you come up to this Fortune 500 level?
Well, the question is about the Fortune 500 companies that we train. What that means is the very large corporations in America mainly, right? And they are looking for some gap in their skill set for their people. It might be sales, it might be leadership, it might be communication. There's something missing in there. And they're looking for a training company who can deliver that. And as I said before, they have got the power and resource to choose anybody. They choose us for one very simple reason. Most training does not work. It's the dirty little secret of the training business. People go off to the training, they get the training, they come back, but they don't apply what they learn. The reason is, particularly in this country, they don't want to step out of their comfort zone. Because stepping out of the comfort zone has risk and change attached to it. And they'd rather not do that. So if training is just providing information, knowledge, data, it goes in here and it goes out there. What Dale Carnegie discovered 100 years ago was that's a problem, because he's killing himself preparing his lectures, giving the lectures, and he's finding that people are not remembering, they're not retaining. He said, why is that? And he studied this and he discovered, well, the problem is I'm the owner of the information. I'm giving it out. What I really need is to get them to have ownership. So he started using the Socratic method of asking questions. So we have structure in our training, but it's based around questions. So we're trying to get people to think of the answer themselves. So we set it up, and then we give them enough information to get going, and then we work on them to pull it out. And by giving them that ownership of the self-discovery, people never forget what they learn, because now they own it completely. So imparting the knowledge, that's one element. The other part is getting the knowledge into action. Unless you can get the knowledge into action, applied knowledge straight away, and people get a chance to try it, they don't move out of that comfort zone. It just, knowledge comes in and goes out, and they don't move. But when they get a chance to try something new, and they find, oh, actually I could do that, and they get a bit more practice, and they say, yeah, well, actually I can do that too. Suddenly their comfort zone is getting bigger and bigger. And as that comfort zone gets bigger, they'll take more risk. They'll try something new, and they'll apply what they've learned back in the workplace. That's the big difference between what Dale Carnegie does and everybody else. Because everyone else, it's just data, dump, download of information and knowledge, and nothing changes. We talk about an equation of emotional change multiplied by behavioural change equals a performance change. Unless you're having that emotional change and that behavioural change, there's not going to be a great performance change. But it sounds simple. Emotional change, behavioural change. It's not that hard, not that easy. To get those things is extremely hard. That's why the trainers, our trainers, have to go through 250 hours of boot camp to become certified in their first course. No one else requires that anywhere. We're massively demanding. But we're still here 105 years later. We're here 54 years later in Japan. And there's a reason for that, because we're getting those outcomes, we're getting the breakthroughs, we're getting those changes in people so they adopt what they've learned and put it into their business. That, I think, is why those Fortune 500 companies use us, because they see an outcome, they see a result. Here's the next question. Yeah.
Actually, I agree with the idea of the Seiko in the middle of the box in the Japanese society. And actually, yeah, I understand that, the Japanese people kind of tend to ignore the outstanding people in the business and also in school, whatever. But at the same time, we need to be outstanding in the business scene, of course. So, do you have any strategy to succeed in such Japanese culture?
So the question is, it's a contradiction. Japan forces conformity, so there's a good blending in, but often innovation and creativity is by stepping out of conformity and doing something different. So how do you get that to work? Japan had a reputation for being a great country of copying other people's technologies and then improving them. But it was never known as a country of innovation. So there's been this idea that Japanese people are not innovative. I disagree with that completely. What they need is the freedom to innovate. What they need is the permission to innovate, and they need the technology of how to innovate. Is everyone familiar with brainstorming? People have done brainstorming here, right? I'll guarantee you that the way you did brainstorming was rubbish. I'll guarantee it. I'll guarantee you it was not very effective. I'll guarantee you that 3 or 4 people got all their ideas up on the whiteboard. The vast majority sat there and watched, and there were some people who were just switched off, just overwhelmed. Because it doesn't take out the hierarchy, it doesn't take out the boisterous and strong, high assertion individuals. We have a technology in brainstorming that takes out that seniority factor, takes out that energy assertion factor, and gets everybody involved in a safe environment in a way they can contribute, and the richness of those ideas that come out is tremendous. So, I think the secret is not about blending in or not blending in. It's about having an opportunity for people to really shine through their ideas. And the way we do it allows that. It's brilliant, and it makes such a difference. Now, I've done lots of brainstorming in my career with different companies. When I learnt the techniques in Dale Carnegie, I thought, wow, this is really this is gold. This is really gold. This is something that's differentiated and very powerful. And that's what's lacking. So it's not a matter of fit in, don't fit in. It's a matter of how to get the ideas out and then how to apply them. And this is, again, the application. This comes back to the decision making I said before. It comes back to urgency, as I said before, the execution piece. Who's going to take responsibility for this? So it's possible, but you've got to set it up in the right way. There's the next question. Yes, please, go ahead.
I'm tempted to ask a question about what the companies, your clients, what do they require in a candidate?
So I couldn't quite catch that.
Your candidates, your clients, like the Fortune 500 companies, so companies that you train employees for.
Yes.
I want to know what they require in the candidates that they ask from you. But at the same time, I feel like institutions like universities are there to actually train us and give us this education for us to go into the workforce. So my question is your business model around the fact that universities are not working, and so you have to, why would your McKinsey not go to Ivy League schools and pick up graduates from there? Why do they come to you for graduates to go through your training program?
Okay. The question is about why do people choose us rather than maybe other alternatives? Why aren't companies relying on universities as enough to generate the capacity for people to be skilled in their work? Japanese universities are about, what do you think, Florian? 200 years behind? Or is it 300? I'm not sure. It's around about 200 to 300 years behind the rest of the world, basically. I went to a Japanese university. I was amazed, absolutely amazed. And I thought to myself, wow, how on earth did Japan become so technologically advanced with such a third world tertiary education system? And the answer is that the companies were doing the training, but it was mainly technical training. They were investing in technical training for their staff so they could be good soldiers male, usually, corporate army, lifetime employment, all that's changed. We've now got more and more women in the environment working. We don't have lifetime employment as much as we did have. A lot of those technological things are one part of it, but they're not every part of it, because where are the soft skills? Now, Japanese companies are very slow to pick up on the soft skills. Fortunately for me, it's that, I went to Africa and no one were wearing shoes, and the sales guy says there's no market here, and the other sales guy or sales gal says there's a huge market here, people need shoes. It's a bit like that, isn't it? There's no soft skill development here to any great extent, so it's either no market or a terrific opportunity. I think it's a terrific opportunity because that's where we can play a part. Because today we're working more cooperatively than we have in the past. We're often in matrix organisations reporting overseas to someone we've never probably even met. So all those communication skills become more important. Globalisation, internationalisation, as Japan has to work outside of Japan, those soft skills become more and more key. How to get willing cooperation from people inside business when younger people are not going to put up with that tough love, strict hierarchy that their parents had to put up with. And they, free agents, hey, I'm out of here. I'm gone. So that I said before about the middle management really has to do their job, great communication skills, great coaching skills, to keep those people in the company. This is where we're needed. For people like McKinsey, Bain, Boston Consulting, yes, they want MBAs, they want people who are going to do their consulting. That's one section of the economy. But for most companies, what they need are people with those soft skills that I talked about before. And university doesn't teach you that. University doesn't teach you how to sell. It doesn't teach you how to be persuasive, particularly, right? Get some elements of it, but it doesn't go after that in the same way that a company like us, which specialises in things, will do. So we bring that to companies in very specialised areas. Now, a lot of our clients are global, and they have their own internal training. But invariably, there are pockets of things on the edge of that which can't be covered by the central organisation. The same, even if you've got internal training, you can't do everything. So you've always got a need for specialist areas like we have outside of that, which is what we cover. So that won't go away. That won't go away. The need to skill up, you still need technical. I'm not saying let's dump all our technical skills and only have soft skills. You need both, I think is the answer. Now, IT nerds, geeky, any IT geeky nerds here? Any self-confessed nerds in this class, geeky types? We get a lot of IT people training with us because they're very smart, they're very technically capable, not great communicators. But invariably, these days, they're being put in front of the client. They have to communicate with the client, whereas before they were sort of stuck in a room somewhere doing geeky stuff was fine. But today, they're going with the salespeople. They're in the room, they're in the meeting. They need to have better people skills, they need better communication skills. If you're a lawyer, you may have law knowledge, but if a client doesn't know, like, and trust you, they've got plenty of other lawyers they can go to. How do you differentiate as a lawyer? Japan's backward too in the medical area. Bedside manner, not well developed in Japan. The doctor's up here, patient, you're down here. That was Australia, 50 years ago. Same thing. Doctor's on a pedestal, patient, you're down here. Not anymore. There's this thing called the internet. We go and search about the case. We look at what other people say about the drugs they've been taking. We argue with the doctor about the prescription he's giving. What happens in Japan? Yes, sir. That's it. No bedside manner. But it will come. Lawyers in the past, well, we're so-and-so, therefore you should use us. Well, not like that anymore. You've got to pitch for business. You've got to compete for business. Engineers, same thing. Architects, same thing. There are more architects in Japan than in America. Think about that. Think about the population. It's basically 1/3 the population with 5 times as many architects. Dentists, huge numbers of dentists here. Massive overpopulation of dentists. There are pockets in Japan where your technical skill alone is not going to cut it. Your soft skills are going to become more and more and more and more important. And we're going to see that across the board in a number of the so-called professions. That's not going to change. Not going to change. How am I going? Am I asking for the final question or should I keep going? What do you think?
I think we can do one more question.
Here's the final question. Yes, please.
Roughly, what is your most affordable leadership training option for small business owners?
Okay, the question is, what is our most appropriate training option for small business owners? I would say it's our Leadership Training for Managers course. Okay, it's a 7-week course, very detailed, goes through everything. What's the difference between leading and managing? How to do delegation, which, generally speaking, everywhere in the world people are weak in delegation, particularly here in Japan. How to do the coaching, again, weak everywhere, particularly weak here in coaching. Communication skills, again, particularly weak here. How to handle mistakes, how to do innovation, how to do decision making. It's got all these very hardcore elements to it. And one of the features of what we do is there's not a lot of instruction like I'm doing now as an actual presentation. There's an amazing amount of interactivity in our training, small groups, middle-sized groups, big groups, because we're trying to get that sharing of experiences. But it's got to be well facilitated. That's why you need 250 hours of boot camp to teach people these skills, to really draw the best out of the room. And that's a big difference. Our training is very dynamic. So when they're getting into a subject which can be quite technical in its own way, to really get the rawness of the experience and share that around, and the insight that comes from that makes it very valuable. So we recently have one more too which might be useful, which is high impact presentations. This is again persuasion power. If you're a leader, you've got to be persuasive. You've got to persuade the buyers to buy. You've got to persuade people to join your company and to stay in your company. And this is going to be something too. Your ability to persuade people to stay with you as a middle manager is going to be a critical skill. If you haven't got that, prepare for gloom and doom and grief in big, big, big dollops. It's going to be hard. So that persuasion power across the board is going to become more and more important. Small group, one-on-one, big group. All of these things are going to become critical as a business tool. So technical skills, yes, but on the soft skills side, this is only going to get more important. It's not going to get less important. Technical skills will always be important, but soft skills are going to have their own importance going forward. And things I talked about today in my own career, as you see, perfectly, logically planned, moving in a completely linear fashion, no. In your generation, they're saying you'll have probably 7 industry changes, not job changes, industry changes. So flexibility, being able to learn things quickly, being able to work as a group, all of these things are becoming more and more critical in your lifetime. So I wish you luck with that. If you get a chance to look on our website, I've got some cards here. If you want my cards, got our website address on it. We've got a lot of free stuff up there. You're welcome to that. You want to catch up with me on LinkedIn, you can access a lot of stuff I've got there. It's all free. It's up to you, but I encourage you to do that because it's a useful thing. And think about the future that I've outlined for Japan, and not just Japan, because a lot of stuff applies outside of Japan. Where's the option for you? Where's the thing that you can do which is going to give you a big advantage over everyone else? I wish you luck for that. Thank you very much for your attention today.